and welcome to another Scots Way podcast. And today I'm joined by Muta'Ali to talk about the film Cassius X, Becoming Ali, which is going to be on at the Glasgow Film Festival this year. Hello, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm great. How are you? I'm excited to be speaking with you.
I'm really well, thanks. And as I said to you just before we started, I've just finished watching the film, so I'm really keen to learn more about it. First of all, how did you come to make the film?
I got a call from Mick McAvoy, who was at Two Rivers at the time, and he had reached out to me long time before we got started. It took about a year or so before we actually got started on the film. Lots of stop and starts with COVID and
Of course.
and so Mick was very excited about it. He sent me Stuart's book, and I read it, and I got excited about it. And I met Stuart, and we started planning. What's our vision for this film, and how we're going to film it. Me being in the States, and them being over in Scotland, and we planned it out, and got started there. I wish I could remember what. I think it was in 2020 when I first spoke with Mick, and then we got started in around the summer of 2021, and kept going from there. I think finished early 2022.
You should say that the Stuart that you're talking about is Stuart Cosgrove, whose book Cassius X, the film, is kind of based on. What was that relationship like? How did that come about, the two of you? I've read the book as well. It's a terrific book. I don't know if I ever saw it becoming a film, so I'm interested in how that relationship worked.
Well, that was actually due to Mick. Mick felt that it could be a film. He reached out to me for a few reasons. I think he liked some of the work that I had done.
Right.
But also he felt that the subject matter could speak to me, being an African-American man who, I mean, as far as he knew, I had a Muslim name, I think, as much as he knew. But once we got to know each other, and I think he's such an artist, and we spoke the same language, then Mick was really the one that convinced me that it could work. And I think prior to that, he had already convinced Stuart. And after reading the book, I felt, yeah, this could be great. The challenges, like as a filmmaker, I was thinking of the challenges. I'm like, oh my goodness, this took place 60 years ago. Who's going to be around to speak with us? But we got past the challenges and made creative decisions to tell the story. And there's a lot in Stuart's book. Stuart's book covers music a great deal. And in the film, we kind of don't cover music as much. We cover mostly Muhammad Ali's boxing journey and spiritual journey, and the music is not really part of it. So Stuart's book, as books can do, delves more deeply into the subject matter.
I guess that's maybe what I was thinking about when I thought I hadn't thought about it being a film at all, was because the depth of the research in the book, and as you say, the kind of musical side going into, because I know that's his kind of area of expertise in particular. Mm-hmm. But what you've done by having some fantastic footage, and also the interviews you do, is have that kind of clear story. And I think it's a time in the man who would become Muhammad Ali's life that, certainly in the UK, we maybe don't know that much about. Is it well known in America?
This part of his story?
Yeah.
Not very much, no. And I haven't seen a documentary told about this era of his life, as far as I can recall. So I didn't know much about it. Right. And growing up, you know Muhammad Ali, but you don't know. Sometimes people don't know that he used to be referred to as Cassius X, Cassius Clay. And so you grow up and you learn layers and layers and layers about people. And he didn't talk too much publicly about his spiritual journey. So there was a lot to learn, and no, I didn't know much about this part of his life. No,
because I think in the UK, that period, he's mostly known for getting knocked down by Henry Cooper. That was Henry Cooper became a kind of star in this country for that one thing. He did adverts and was on chat shows and all sorts of things. But so what was interesting to me was learning, how he kind of went through his early fights, and then that, a incredible fight with Sonny Liston, which we might talk about later, but also the relationships that he was having then, and this one in particular with Malcolm X. Now, I knew a little bit about Malcolm X through the film and through a bit of his story, and knew about Muhammad Ali, but I did not know how strong that connection was at this period in his life. Can you talk a bit about that?
Well, yeah, Malcolm X, at that time when he met Cassius Clay, had a high rank in the Nation of Islam, and they bonded with one another. And as Ambassador Shabazz will tell you, Malcolm X didn't recruit, as he was known, Cassius Clay, to become a part of the nation, but he served more as an older brother who would answer all the questions that Cassius had. And during that time in America, in the early 60s, a tremendous amount was going on when it came to racial tension.
Yeah.
And there was an awakening when it came to African Americans about their identities. And so Malcolm X, being such a powerful force, I think helped Cassius with his decisions to join the nation. But of course, their relationship evolved and changed over the years. I didn't know. I was excited that, Malcolm X attended some of Muhammad Ali's boxing matches. And, he went to the Doug Jones fight, and obviously he was at the Sonny Liston fight. I think I knew that one, but I didn't know that he had been following Muhammad Ali for a long time. And it was great to, as I do documentaries, it's great to learn. And so it was exciting to see what their relationship was really like.
Because they became friends, really, didn't they? Very close in
Yes.
terms of the family, knew each other and everything.
Right. Yeah, definitely friends. And it's a heartbreaking part of the story when that friendship sort of split for a range of reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see, and I won't give anything away, but the kind of final interview is just still so powerful. And it just makes you think, sometimes it makes you think about the stubbornness of men often, but this kind of thing that was, as you say, quite heartbreaking, really. And what did that relationship, did that affect wider America's perception of Cassius Clay coming through?
Yes, I think his relationship with Malcolm X at the time did not serve him when it came to mainstream America accepting him as their champion. As the film will show, mainstream America knew little about the Nation of Islam, and with the little they did know, it kind of made them fearful. What is this organization about? I think even Muhammad Ali's family was part of the family. I think his brother joined the nation, but was nervous about him joining the nation and being associated with that. And but I think people had to learn to embrace his evolution. And we have a little bit of that from Jim Lampley in the story, because Jim Lampley was a childhood. He loved Muhammad Ali, when he was Cassius Clay, and he had to go through the sort of, it seemed like trauma he went through to watch his beloved Cassius Clay change his identity. And but I was so grateful that Jim was honest with us and open with us emotionally about that journey, and that he ended up, being lifelong friends with Muhammad Ali also, he told us.
Yeah, that is very interesting, because he kind of says at the end, I had questions I needed answered to see if I could still like the guy or love the guy as it was at that point, which I think is probably the right response to it, is to kind of think, okay, this change is going on here. How do I kind of go with these changes?
Absolutely.
The interviews you get are fantastic. And you said, this was kind of stop-start due to COVID and lockdowns and everything. So were you in the room with people, or how did you get these fantastic interviews?
Yes, I was in the room with everyone. We traveled with a small crew. I mean, relatively small. My producing partner, Javon Frank, had coordinated with everyone over in the UK. And we shot almost everything in the States except for those stylized shots with the props and everything. Every interview was done in the States, and it was just about 4 of us. And we just had to abide by the COVID protocol at that time, and that was fine. That wasn't the biggest. I don't think that was the biggest challenge. When I think back about the challenges, that wasn't the biggest challenge. I think the biggest challenge, was getting, we're telling a story about somebody's spiritual journey that they didn't write about and didn't share much about. So we're using sort of the effect that Cassius Clay had on others and capturing their testimony about what they felt and what they thought and what was happening in the world to tell a story about what his shift in identity was rooted in. And so that to me was the most challenging thing, because he's not here to tell his story. And doing that, I think we accomplished that, and we did it in an artistic way, in a way that also allows us to show him, you know, fighting in the ring. And that I love the footage of that, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, talking about the fight with Sonny Liston, which I knew about, I'd read about, but I'd never actually seen. And when you see the two men going into the ring together, you still think this is unfair, because Liston is huge. You know, it's quite slight for a heavyweight boxer these days, definitely. Quite a slight looking, almost a middleweight looking fighter. But the way he takes him apart and just kind of destroys this almost reputation, as well as the boxer too, that he had to get through there. And it's incredible to see.
Right. And I didn't know, I hadn't watched the fight in such depth before with the commentary that we got. And so that really painted a clear picture to me about what happened there. And I didn't know that Sonny Liston had knocked out the former heavyweight champion twice in the first round, Floyd Patterson. So I was like, this guy is a beast, you know, this guy's a beast. So I understood why people before the fight were expecting Muhammad Ali to be, you know, driven to the hospital and in intensive care and all of that. And it was really tense. But at the end of the fight, there's a certain feeling that comes about, at least when I watch it. And it's like, wow, he really did it. He really did it. It's like you're watching him become Muhammad Ali right there.
It reminded me a little bit of what he did later in the George Foreman fight, where again, I think people thought he was just going there to be beaten up, and yet managed to find a way to win. And yeah, it's just incredible to see. You can see why he became the kind of icon that he did in the sport. But when you have your interviews as well, you can see by the kind of how much he meant to these people who met him through various ways, and still means so much to them. You know, there's real emotion and excitement and everything. And, you know, some of these people are not in their first flush of youth. You know, you're talking...
Right.
But they still, you know, their connection to Muhammad Ali is, you can see it on their faces and in their voices.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why we chose to do close-ups. There's a lot of tight shots of everybody speaking, and I really loved the result of that, because we got to see what was happening inside of them, and you could tell that people had such visceral, fond memories of interacting and watching and loving, if we're talking about Didi Sharp, Muhammad Ali. So I definitely appreciate what they contributed. Yeah,
that kind of 24 hours, maybe 48 hours, you win the heavyweight championship of the world against someone who nobody thought you would, and then you have the other side of that, which I won't say to people to watch the film, but you know, that relationship with Didi Sharp, and you can see how much it still means to her all those years later.
Can't you? Yeah, you can tell. We were sitting in the set like, wow, she seems like she's married now, so you know, with all due respect, she just seemed like she could tap back into the love that she had for him, and you could see it on her face, and that was so sweet. Some of the stories she shared, but you know, it was a little bit. It was tough to listen to her reasons, you know, why things went the way they did. It's tough to hear how people were, you know, what do you call that? I wouldn't say repulsed, but they were turned off by him identifying with the Nation of Islam and with him changing his name. And you know, I was particularly drawn to what she shared, because within the African American community, Christianity in America is prevalent. You know, even my extended family is Baptist, you know, and it takes a while sometimes for people to accept or marry or be in relationships with people who are Muslim, because there's just some I don't know, it's just not that simple for certain people, you know. So I'm glad we captured that a little bit.
We have a slightly similar thing in this part of the world with Protestant and Catholic, which can often problems in a similar way. The third person in the relationship, if you like, is Elijah Muhammad. And he's a person that I think we don't know too much about in this country as well. So I thought maybe you could tell us a bit more about him and his kind of cultural importance.
Well, I know from my father, you know, growing up, he would tell me certain things about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He would cite certain books. I would see certain books on the shelf. Culturally, it depends on where you stand. I think I grew up sort of on one side of it where, at least at the time when I was a child, it's evolved over the years, the Nation of Islam. The Nation of Islam was respected, and it still is, but looked upon as an organization that is always there in the community where something needs to be done, you know? And it's when I talk with my father about it, he remembers being younger, you know, in the 70s actually, and seeing the nation and being so impressed by them, the way they dressed, the way they carried themselves. And I might be getting my years, could have been the 60s too. And it was all led by Elijah Muhammad. And so he has, even to this day, a great deal of power, a great deal of influence. And sometimes, I think maybe because of the way he speaks, he had a certain way of speaking that was different from Malcolm X. And maybe because some of his messages might land a little sharp to people's ears in terms of what he's trying to convey. Some of the things he says could be looked upon as unkind, you know, that people throw the baby away with the bathwater. But from what I understand, he was offering different perspectives on who you are, Black man, and how you should carry yourself, Black man, what you should eat, Black man, how you should lead your family. And that has trickled down into so many areas in America that have crossed paths with me, even though I'm not in the Nation of Islam, and I never was, you know. But I've gone to events that were sponsored by them, and it's been powerful things in my life, you know. So this all started with Elijah Muhammad making the nation into what it is. There's a story of the nation before him, but I don't want to get all into those details. But you know, when you watch the film, you'll hear more about, you'll hear him directly. You'll hear directly some of the things he said. And I took the liberty of selecting those things, and I'm hoping as an artist that's fine. It doesn't sum up everything that he was about, but if you imagine them hitting the ear of a young Cassius Clay, growing up in the powder keg of racial tension in America at that time, hearing the voice of Elijah Muhammad that is empowering, you can go along on this journey with him of awakening and realizing, you know, I can think for myself, and part of that thinking for himself led to him changing his identity.
And what was the relationship between now Muhammad Ali and Elijah Muhammad like? Because due to it, Malcolm X is kind of sidelined, is that the way? Or just, you know, he no longer, their relationship's finished. It's almost like you finish one, you have to move on to the next.
Yeah, I think because Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali, they had a strong friendship, but Muhammad Ali was loyal to Elijah Muhammad. I put him in a bind. And once Elijah Muhammad was no longer, I guess we could just say friendly with Malcolm X, it put Muhammad Ali in a situation where he couldn't be friends with both of them. Right. I get, you know, the sense, I don't know, I'm not an expert, I'm an artist, I'll say that 20 times a day. I get the sense that Muhammad Ali wouldn't prefer to have lost his friend. Yeah. You know, I get the sense that it wasn't something that he truly felt good about, no longer being able to have that bond with his friend and mentor and big brother, depending on how you refer to it. But he just didn't have a choice at that time. Yeah.
And so this is the period where he says, first of all, I'm Cassius X, and then I'm Muhammad Ali. And what's fascinating and probably not surprising is the way that many people refuse to acknowledge that and still call him Cassius and still call him Clay and all of these things. I mean, yeah. It's incredible to see, but as I say, it's probably not surprising. Was there a fear of this change and that people didn't want it, or was it pure ignorance?
Well, yeah, I think part of control, when you think about societal control, naming something gives you a lot of control.
Mm-hmm.
And in America, at least, there's a fear historically of African Americans who came from a history of their ancestors being enslaved after being free individuals in Africa. There's a fear of rebellion. And I think that there's a lot of unaddressed pain, a lot of unaddressed trauma that has been put upon African Americans. Still to this day, we're in the process of having people not be able to read about this trauma in our schools. And because of that trauma, people still can't look it in the face and say, something was wrong. People were wronged here. And what that does is and I'm speaking just in terms of my own personal experience, is it puts America in a situation where we know we've done something wrong to these Black people, and we've not fully addressed it. We're not even allowing them to publicly fully make it the truth. We're going to call it a lie. So if they go ahead and do something as serious as change their names, and their names are associated with our colonization of them, that's fundamentally a revolution inside their own mind and in their own spirit. There's not much difference between taking off the slave name, so to speak, and taking off the rule of the colonizer in terms of how you behave, what you say, what you don't say, how you live your life. And so there's fear there. And in America, we fear a lot of what's foreign, and it's another language. It's not only a different religion, it's another language. So Muhammad means worthy of praise, And so in America, we don't have names like that. But there's fear of the difference, and there's fear of the inner spiritual rebellion. And it's hard also to embrace things that are different because of binary thinking. How am I going to embrace this Muhammad Ali man when I'm an American, I'm Christian, I'm so and so. I cannot embrace him because I'm going to be turning my back on my people. It's just so it puts a lot of people in a point of tension. It puts a lot of people where they are fearful, and they were fearful. They were fearful.
Yeah, because one of the journalists said whenever he put in a report that said Muhammad Ali, it would be taken out and Cassius Clay would be put in, which is just astonishing to think.
Right.
But yet, as we know, certainly from outside, America did embrace Muhammad Ali and was thought, certainly in this country, perhaps the greatest sportsman, of all time. That's how, people think of him. Is that the case in America, or is it more nuanced than that?
No, I think Muhammad Ali in America is I don't know who you would put above him in terms of being a boxer. At least there's debate among boxers, like who is Floyd Mayweather better or whatever. But Muhammad Ali is the greatest, not just because of his skill, as we all know. It's in and outside the ring, just how he carried himself, his charisma, his personality, his fighting skills, his tenacity, and his ability to stand up for himself no matter what it costs. Is an inspiration. So every great boxer is not an inspiration,
Yeah, that's fair to say. And throughout the film, there's amazing footage that you've got hold of. How difficult was it to find that? Was that a big challenge?
Oh, the boxing footage, I don't think it was a big challenge to get. The Liston fight was a challenge because we had different angles that all of them hadn't been. I think that was the biggest challenge. We had different angles and they were all different frame rates and I think resolutions and all that stuff. But Liga, who was doing our archival, she did a splendid job. So I didn't have to get bogged down with that too much. I'll tell you the side of the story where now that I'm speaking about it, when Clay was young, they weren't filming him too much.
Yeah.
Muhammad Ali is the most, I guess, photographed athlete in the world. But when he was young, during these years, he wasn't photographed as much. He wasn't interviewed as much, and that was a challenge. Now that I'm talking about it, we and so I think we had to lean on a lot of creative elements to work around that. So the boxing matches, they weren't truly a challenge. I wanted to have some more, but I think diving into the Doug Jones and Henry Cooper and all that was just the best thing to do. But his personal life and the Muslims who he was meeting in Miami, and I wish we had more of that. I wish we had more. And him with Malcolm X, I wish we had more of that also.
So this is it's only the start of Muhammad Ali, as we know, his story. Would you consider looking at any further, taking the next stage of his, because there's a lot more to come, as we know.
Oh, you mean as a director, would I?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would. I know if it could be, Stuart did a splendid job at re-examining the life of someone who's been examined 1,000 times over. And I think that if it were another chapter in Muhammad Ali's life that we could look through a different lens at, I would love to do that. I mean, who wouldn't? It's an honor just to be doing a project about him. So yeah, I would jump at the chance.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you about it. I can't wait for other people to see it, because it's such it's one of these, a bit like Stuart's book. I thought I knew a bit about Muhammad Ali, and then you realize actually he's seeped into your life, and you know a lot of stuff, and then you get to know a lot more about it, which is what the film does as well.
Thank you. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to headed out to Glasgow in the top of March to the Glasgow Film Festival, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. So.
Oh yeah, well I urge people to go and get a ticket for that, because it's a fantastic film. Yes. Even if you're not a boxing fan, you think you're not a sport fan, there's so much else going on in it. The stories. I wouldn't give away anything, but I really did enjoy it. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. It's been a real pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And we'll be back soon with someone completely different. Cheers.